You can't put a price on truth, but you can put a price on where you get it. Save 40% on DailyWire Plus gift memberships for Father's Day with code DAD40 at dailywire.com/gift. The bromance is officially over. And boy, oh boy, is it over. President Trump had this to say about Elon Musk.
I'm very disappointed because Elon knew the inner workings of this bill better than almost anybody sitting here, better than you people. He knew everything about it. He had no problem with it. All of a sudden he had a problem, and he only developed the problem when he found out that we're going to have to cut the EV mandate, because that's billions and billions of dollars, and it really is unfair. We want to have cars of all types. Electric, we want to have electric, but we want to have a gasoline, combustion. We want to have different. We want to have hybrids. We want to have all. We want to be able to sell everything. And when that was cut, and Congress wanted to cut it, he became a little bit different, and I can understand that. But he knew every aspect of this bill. He knew it better than almost anybody, and he never had a problem until right after he left. And if you saw the statements he made about me, which I'm sure you can get very easily, it's very fresh on tape. He said the most beautiful things about me. And he hasn't said bad about me personally, but I'm sure that'll be next. But I'm very disappointed in Elon. I've helped Elon a lot.
So on at least one of those claims, on the, Elon's going to start speaking bad about me personally, that is a fact check true. Elon Musk returned the volley by writing, quote, "Whatever, keep the EV solar incentive cuts, but ditch the mountain of disgusting pork in the bill. In the entire history of civilization, there's never been legislation that is both big and beautiful." The libertarian thesis. President Trump then responded in a properly Trumpian fashion, and they kind of kept accelerating things until Elon finally accused him of being in the Jeffrey Epstein files. So it's personal. It's nasty. Before we get into all of it, I need to know, let me know in the comments, which side are you on, son? Team Elon or Team Trump? I'm Michael Knowles. This is the Michael Knowles Show. Welcome back to the show. Greta Thunberg is on a little boat. She's always on a boat. She's sailing with a keffiyeh on to Gaza. Greta used to be concerned about the weather. Now she, it appears, is concerned about the people who control the weather. We will get into why Greta is headed to the Holy Land. First, I want to tell you about Vandy Crisps. Go to vandycrisps.com/Knowles. Did you know that all chips and fries used to be cooked in beef tallow up until the 1990s when big corporations made the switch to cheap processed seed oils? Today, seed oils make a staggering 20% of the average American's daily calories. That's a lot. Recent studies have started linking these oils to metabolic health issues and inflammation throughout the body, which got the folks at Vandy Crisps thinking there must be a better way. They decided to go back to basics and created a potato chip with just 3 simple ingredients: heirloom potatoes, sea salt, and 100% grass-fed beef tallow. What makes Vandy different is not just what they've taken out, but what they put back in. That grass-fed beef tallow is not just for flavor, it's actually packed with nutrients that are great for your skin, brain, and hormones. When you snack on Vandy, you'll notice the difference immediately. The main reason that I love Vandy is because it's the most delicious potato chip I've ever had, and it's so much better than a regular potato chip that it actually tastes almost like something else entirely. It tastes like what you dreamt of a potato chip tasting like. Made 100% in America with zero shortcuts, Vandy represents what snacking should feel like. Satisfying and guilt-free. Ready to give Vandy a try? Go to vandycrisps.com/Knowles. Use code Knowles for 25% off your first order. vandycrisps.com/Knowles. Code Knowles for 25% off your first order. This is nasty, man. And I'm in Washington, D.C. You can see her. I'm here at CPI, right by Capitol Hill. And all anybody's talking about are all these mean tweets between Trump and his former best buddy, Elon. Trump tweets out, quote, "Elon was wearing thin. I asked him to leave. I took away his EV mandate that forced everyone to buy electric cars that nobody else wanted, that he knew for months I was going to do. And he just went crazy." and then not to put too fine a point on it, President Trump said the easiest way to save money in our budget billions and billions of dollars, is to terminate Elon's governmental subsidies and contracts. I was always surprised that Biden didn't do it. And then, as I alluded to in the introduction, Elon said that the reason Trump hasn't released the Epstein files is because he's in them, which actually is not really a surprise. We know that Trump had some kind of association with Jeffrey Epstein, even in as much as Jeffrey Epstein was a member of Mar-a-Lago Club before President Trump kicked him out. So that's actually not all that surprising, but it sounds really salacious and surprising. In any case, what's going on here? I guess my reaction is just one of surprise. Not surprise that the bromance broke up. In fact, I was speaking to a friend of mine right after the election. Very smart guy. He's not a politico. He works in finance, but very intelligent guy. And he said, okay, how long do you put it before Musk and Trump blow up? He goes, I put it at about 4 months. I said, no, I don't know. He said, no, 4 months. There's no way those two giant personalities, those boisterous billionaires, are going to stay simpatico. I put it at 4 months. And then I did the math yesterday. I said, okay, January, February, March, April, May, and it's June 6th, right? I said, man, my buddy was off by like 2 weeks, but otherwise that's when it broke up. And then I guess, so I'm surprised that people are surprised by that. I'm also surprised that people are surprised by the big, beautiful bill. I'm not saying that just to flack for the bill. What more did you want from the big, beautiful bill? Because the big, beautiful bill gives you your tax cuts. Did you want the tax cuts or you didn't want the tax cuts? The tax cuts that went into place in 2017, had they been allowed to expire, would be the largest tax increase in American history. Did you want that? Because I thought Trump campaigned on making the tax cuts permanent. You get that. There is some increased spending on the military. Trump campaigned on that. Some increased spending on the border. Trump campaigned on that. What's the problem? A little bit of increased spending on the child tax credit. Trump campaigned on that. Little increased spending because of the no tax on tips. Or rather, I guess that could in principle exacerbate the deficit. But then there are some spending cuts. Spending cuts to Medicaid, because Mike Johnson pointed out, just down the street here from where I'm sitting, Mike Johnson pointed out that there are 1.4 million illegal aliens who are getting healthcare benefits in this country. And because there are a lot of people who are on Medicaid who don't even pretend to try to work or volunteer or educate themselves. So there's going to be a minimal work requirement, 80 hours per month. And that could, the libs say, 80 hours per month of working, volunteering, educating yourself. Well, that means that millions of people will lose health insurance. You say, okay, well, those guys are ne'er-do-wells who really aren't entitled to it in the first place. So you get a lot of spending cuts. What did you expect? Elon says that there's a lot of pork in the bill. I actually don't think there's much pork at all in the bill. There's a ton of spending, but spending and pork are not the same thing. I actually don't even really have a problem with pork. Pork is earmarks to get congressmen to come along and vote for something. The real drivers of spending are things like the entitlement programs. There's some tweaks there, but Trump campaigned on not changing Medicaid, not changing Social Security. So I don't know, what did you expect? To me, it's so weird because Elon is a smart guy and he's a serious person and everything. But he sounds like a college kid who just worked on his first campaign. I remember I was a college kid once who worked on his first campaign. And I remember the idealism and, well, this is great. We're going to eliminate the budget deficit. We're going to start paying down the debt. But that's not how it works. Even the notion that somehow we were going to start paying down the national debt with this bill. You can't just be running zillion-dollar surpluses for decades and then immediately stop and start paying debt. That's just not how it works. Plus, you have this razor-thin majority in the Congress, a slightly bigger majority in the Senate. I don't know. I guess enough. I will stop pontificating on the big, beautiful bill, except in as much to say, are people that unrealistic? Are people that idealistic? Not just ordinary people on the street, but even the $400 billion tech genius who's going to go to Mars. What did you guys think you were going to get? It's the H.L. Mencken line. I've been quoting it all week. Democracy is the theory that the common man knows what he wants and deserves to get it good and hard. What are we... Okay, I said I was done pontificating on it. I'm almost done pontificating on it. One last point, because I know there are going to be some people who say, well, I'm with Musk on this. Okay, I get it. I like Musk. I'm grateful to Elon Musk for helping the Republicans win the election. He really did help the Republicans get across the finish line in a big way. But if his strategy is there's no such thing as a big, beautiful bill, it's all got to be thin. We want the government to fit into our pockets. We need to just slash spending. We need major entitlement reform. We need just remember this. The Republicans tried that strategy for like 25 years, and we didn't get anywhere with it. Sometimes we got power, sometimes we lost power, but it never worked. We campaigned on it, and we never actually did it. And Elon said he's going to start a new political party for the 80% in the middle who want massive entitlement reform. No one wants that. Look, I'm open to it. I get it. I understand why people who are looking at policies and looking at the debt bomb want that, but the people don't want that. The Tea Party kind of failed, and the Republicans lost in 2012, and that moment passed. The last time we had a balanced budget in America was 2001, and that's only because we were coming off of the internet bubble and we had the post-Cold War dividend. Explain to me how you're going to get that. Well, we should get that. Okay. All right. Right. I love the idealism, but come on. We live in reality. Speaking of breakups, Bidenworld is turning on Karine Jean-Pierre. This is some juicy tea from Axios. Bidenworld, according to Axios, going scorched earth on Karine Jean-Pierre. What are they saying about her? Well, many of Karine Jean-Pierre's former colleagues are reacting to the news that she is coming out with a book, and it's a tell-all, and it's going to talk about the broken Democratic Party and the betrayal of the former president by the Democrats. Some former colleagues are saying she was part of the problem, according to interviews with more than 24 former Biden officials. Apparently, she was a key part of the effort to conceal Biden's decline. Of course, we all know that. She said that Biden was as sharp as ever, even after that awful debate where Biden was just drooling on himself. So yeah, okay, we know that. No surprises there. What's curious about this piece, just think about the order of things. Karine Jean-Pierre flags for the president. The Democrats put up this united front. They lie, they cheat, they conceal. It all falls apart. People start tuning them out, not only at the ballot box, but on all their media channels, because the liberals know they were lied to by their own elites. And then KJP comes out and says, well, I'm leaving the Democrat Party because Biden was betrayed by the Democrats. In other words, I'm on Team Biden and the Democrats betrayed us. But then no sooner does she do that than the people in the Team Biden say, well, hold on, we were going to separate from you. We don't let you betrayed us by siding against the Democrats who betrayed Joe. And so you can't even call this a civil war in the Democrat Party, because a civil war implies clear sides. There are no clear sides here. It's just all the Democrats fighting each other. It's just a melee, an absolute bloodbath of chaos and anarchy. And I'm here for it. I think that's terrific. The Democrats are probably not going to get their act together before the midterms. They'll have some momentum going into the midterms, because the party that's out of power always has momentum going to the midterms. But I have not seen the Democrats in this degree of disarray since at least 2006. Since at least the time when the Howard Deans of the world were trying to pull the Democrats to the left after the failures of John Kerry and Al Gore and all the rest. And maybe it might be worse. It might be worse for them, which is fine by me, which is why I want to tell you about Momentous. You need to go to livemomentous.com, use code Knowles. While other brands chase trends and flood the market with endless options, Momentous takes a different approach. They rely on research and expert guidance to focus on what truly matters, mastering the fundamentals with unwavering consistency, then tailoring supplementation to your specific goals. Momentous sets a new benchmark in the supplement industry through their commitment to transparency and trust. Working alongside human performance specialists, they develop formulas that have earned both NSF and Informed Sport certification, providing the reliability that their 200-plus professional and collegiate athletic customers depend on. Momentous sources the highest-grade creatine monohydrate available, an essential supplement for both men and women seeking peak physical and cognitive performance. Rather than cutting corners, they prioritize ingredient quality over cost, ensuring that their products deliver exactly what's promised on the label. It's really interesting to me, and I'm not even all that focused on physical fitness, but, Mr. Davies over here, he's a kind of like a beefcake decathlete, and he absolutely swears by this kind of stuff. What are you waiting for? Head on over to livemomentous.com. Use code Knowles, KNWLAS, for 35% off your first subscription. Become a beefcake like Mr. Davies. Use code Knowles, KNWLAS, livemomentous.com for 35% off your first subscription. Speaking of clear moral issues, really disturbing story in the Wall Street Journal. Longevity is now a factor when picking an embryo for IVF. DNA analysis predicts likelihood of age-related conditions such as heart disease and cancer. So, I hate to say I told you so, and I've been telling you so on IVF for a long time. The way that people are going to read this is they're going to say, okay, well, with IVF, IVF allows us to know certain things about our children, and it allows us to know the sex, before they're implanted in the womb. And they know, well, now doing DNA analysis, we can know how long they're going to live. I'm a little skeptical of this. I think it's kind of dubious information, but fair enough. The way most people are going to read that is you're going to say, okay, this new technology is going to help us extend the lives of our children. That's not what it does. This technology, once you get past all the euphemisms, this technology is supplying parents with dubious information, but information nonetheless, that will help them to decide how to kill their weakest children. That's really what this is about. Because in IVF, you make a bunch of little babies, a bunch of little embryos, and then you pick which ones you want. And sometimes you implant multiple of them, and if too many of them take and you don't want that many children, then you kill the extra ones through abortion, and then you take the rest of the babies that are in the petri dish and you put them in a freezer forever until the clinic or you decide that you want to finally get rid of them. And what this technology does is allows you to look at all the little persons in the petri dish and say, I think that one's going to be weak. We're going to kill off that one. I don't want my weak child. And I don't want that weak child. And that one looks like he's going to be strong. Maybe he'll have blonde hair and blue eyes, a real Aryan Ubermensch. Yeah, give me that one. Implant that one, and the rest of my weaklings, throw them off a cliff. That's what that does. So it's eugenics in a really dark way. Because even that word eugenics is so charged. Everyone engages in eugenics to some degree, because when you go on a date with a hot chick, you are kind of engaging in eugenics, right? You say, oh, she's hot. Maybe we'll get married someday and we'll have beautiful children. That'd be great. That is a just form of eugenics. There are unjust forms of eugenics too, like when you're killing off people that you consider to be Untermenschen. That's what IVF is doing. And that's what IVF necessarily does, because IVF transforms how we view human persons away from being subjects with proper rights into being commodities, into being objects to be bought and sold and tinkered with as we please. No bueno. Now, speaking of former children, Greta is on a boat again. Loves being on a boat. And she's wearing a keffiyeh, and she's raising the Palestine flag. the Greta sailboat went dark real quick. She's sailing into Gaza, and the state of Israel is threatening, it seems, to blow her up. According to reporting, Israel warned Wednesday that it is prepared to act accordingly to stop Greta Thunberg's so-called Freedom Flotilla Coalition from reaching Gaza. Okay, the whole thing's getting real dark, man. But I don't think Israel is going to blow up Greta. Greta's going to keep making a show of herself as she's been doing. She's not a little girl anymore. She started out when she was in her, mid-teenage years, and that was a while ago. I mean, she's in her 20s now. And as some have observed, she went from being focused on the weather to the people who control the weather, ostensibly. So, okay, maybe there's a kind of coherence there, but there's not much coherence. How do you go from having your raison d'etre be to stop the sun from shining to putting on a keffiyeh and shilling for Islamist political movements? How? I'll tell you exactly how. Because Greta, whatever her motivations when she was a teenager, Greta now is not a political activist who is just pulled by the necessity and the urgency of the moment to help save the world. She's not that. She is an aging pop star looking for a comeback. That's what it's really about. She got a lot of notoriety and she got a lot of plaudits because when she was a teenager, she got in a sailboat and actually caused more environmental pollution because then her handlers flew over in jets and everything. It would have been easier if she just got on a Southwest flight or something. But she got in a little boat and she kind of sailed across and made a big media show out of it and dropped it at school. You can't be a truant forever. And at a certain point, that act runs thin. So she needed a second act, just like Madonna needs a second act, just like the Rolling Stones need a second act. She needed a second act, and she's decided that the climate change is over. No one really cares about that anymore. That doesn't get you eyeballs on television. So what's the big issue now is Israel-Palestine. The pro-Palestine side of that codes left. The pro-Israel side basically codes right. She's a leftist activist. Okay, I'm going to be pro-Palestine now. Okay. Whatever the next issue is, whether it's saving the baby seals or, I don't know, opening the southern border or something. She'll just do that. She's just looking for a second act. Now, speaking of making a comeback, normal TV is making a comeback. I teased this a little bit yesterday. According to GLAAD is this pro-LGBT LMNOP organization. According to GLAAD, the number of LGBT characters on television is down 36%. This is according to their 19th annual report. And the GLAAD researchers say we're not going to have new data on this year until September, but the numbers are likely to trend down. I predicted this on the show, I think, yesterday. I think we've reached peak. And in fact, I think we reached peak sometime around 2019. I think the LGBT, LMNOP cultural movement reached its apotheosis when the White House was lit up in rainbows in what was that, 2015? And then Biden's hanging all the nonsense on the White House portico. So it was, 2021, 2022, something like that. And the height of the trans movement. And then sometime during COVID, I think it just flipped. We've reached peak. The number of characters are going down. People don't like it anymore. That's it. It's not even. It would be better for the pro-LGBT radicals if this were still a really contentious issue and you had people on the right who were really trying to clamp down on the LGBT stuff and you people on the left who were really defending the trans books in kindergarten or whatever. But it's actually not that. It's even worse for them. No one really likes it anymore. No one really cares. It's over. It's weird. Trump won the popular vote. We're done with that. And the Pride organizations are trying to adjust. I mentioned Boise Pride had to cancel its kickoff event due to lack of attendance, not because of protests, not because of angry letters from the church ladies, because no one cares anymore. PrideUK complaining that corporate America not going either. We'll get to some of that evidence in a moment. First, I want to tell you about NetSuite. You need to go to netsuite.com/Knowles. The business landscape has never been more volatile. Tariff policies shift without warning. Supply chains face unprecedented pressure, and cash flow constraints are tightening across industries. In this environment, real-time adaptability is not just an advantage, it's survival. Companies that can't pivot quickly are not just falling behind, they're facing existential threats. To navigate this chaos, you need complete visibility across every aspect of your operation, from global shipments and tariff impacts to real-time cash flow analysis. NetSuite by Oracle delivers exactly that through its AI-powered business management suite, already trusted by over 41,000 companies worldwide. As the leading cloud ERP platform, NetSuite consolidates accounting, financial management, inventory, and HR into a single unified system that serves as your one source of truth. This comprehensive visibility enables lightning-fast decision-making backed by real-time forecasting and actionable data insights. With AI automation handling routine tasks throughout the platform, your teams can focus on strategic initiatives while NetSuite identifies bottlenecks, calculates their true cost, and provides clear pathways for rapid pivots when market conditions demand immediate action. It's one system, full control. Tame the chaos with NetSuite. If your revenues are at least in the seven figures, download the free ebook, Navigating Global Trade, 3 Insights for Leaders at netsuite.com/Knowles. That is netsuite.com/Knowles. My favorite comment yesterday is from Ben March 23. It says, pass a budget that cuts the debt. That's what we voted for. No, you didn't. Maybe you did. But you can't say, I want massive tax cuts and I want a massive increase in military spending and immigration enforcement and child tax credits and no tax on tips and I want to cut the debt. That's not possible. Even the phrase cut the debt is nonsensical. People very often confuse the deficit and the debt. We have a gigantic, 30 some odd trillion dollars national debt. Our debt to GDP ratio is something like 120% now. And we have a budget deficit. That is the government spending more money than it takes in. Those are different things. So even if you reduced the budget deficit, you would still be adding money to the debt. This is why I was joking about this on TMZ yesterday, the day before, that in Washington, a spending cut is when you reduce the increase in spending. So you're still increasing spending, you're just doing it at a lower rate than you otherwise would have. And I kind of get it. There is no way that you can be running these zillion-dollar deficits for decades, and then one day just kind of turn it off. Federal spending just does not work that way. And so in as much as people voted for massive tax cuts, massive government programs, and cutting the debt, you voted for a thing that cannot exist. It's like voting for a square circle that doesn't exist. And you can blame Trump, and you can blame Mike Johnson, and you can blame any of the politicians, but they're giving you what you want. And in some cases, what they have to do. Am I like the last Republican who is not working for the government who defends the big, beautiful bill? Maybe I just never thought we were going to get a better bill. I'm actually pretty impressed with how the bill came out. I know it's a very unpopular opinion, but it's true. You come to this show for the truth, man. Okay, I'm not going to flatter you. Meanwhile, back to the weird stuff. PrideUK is complaining that companies are not going this year. They've got this side by side, 2024 to 2025. That Apple was rainbow. Now it's black. The IBM was rainbow. Now it's blue or something. Same is true of HP, American Airlines, Paramount Plus, but even Vogue. It's done. What changed? What changed between Pride 2024 and Pride 2025? Did the culture change? Not really. Did, the civic associations change? Not really. You know what changed? It was the government, the state, the election. That was the only thing that changed. Which is why, as we're kind of, I think, showing some of the flaws in libertarian analyses, the kind that get people really, really excited that the government spends money and everything. When we're looking at flaws in libertarian analyses, this shows us a flaw in that old analysis that politics is downstream of culture. Because in this case, culture, the companies, is downstream of politics, of the government. I don't think you can really even distinguish between politics and culture, but this is the government came in, it changed. And the companies looked around and they said, oh, shoot, Trump won the popular vote. Okay, we can't go anymore. And then furthermore, they looked at who's in the White House and they realized that Trump not only won the popular vote, but Trump is willing to use the bully pulpit to bully companies that try to mess up our culture. So he's not even one of these laissez-faire, oh, well, I might not support transing the little kids, but I'll defend to the death some international corporation's right to do it. No, that ain't Trump. That ain't Trump. That ain't me. That ain't a conservative point of view. And so he comes out and he says, I'm going to destroy your company if you do bad things and ruin our country. And what do you know? The companies get in line. Absolutely love it. A reminder, do not satisfy yourself with mere cultural change outside of politics and government. That sort of thing doesn't really exist in a vacuum, and you can get a lot of cultural change with the government. Meanwhile, a Catholic priest, is he a Catholic priest? He's a Jesuit. Father James Martin, just as the church is coming together, is unifying, is returning to a clear articulation of orthodoxy and norms, and it's really great. Just as the whole pop culture, even in the secular world, is turning against the Rainbow Month, Father James Martin, who was famous for, after a confusing guidance came out from the Vatican, a New York Times reporter just happened to see him blessing a same-sex couple holding hands. Just happened to be there. What are the odds? Father James Martin says, it's especially important for churches to mark Pride Month, since much of the rejection that LGBTQ people have faced has been motivated by Christianity, at least what many people think Christianity teaches. It's like no one, absolutely no one. Father James Martin, we need to mark Pride Month. No, man, no, we don't. we don't. On this issue, as on so many issues, Father James Martin is wrong. He has a pretty weird obsession with promoting weird sex stuff, and he's wrong, and it's unfortunate, and it creates a lot of scandal, and it's unfortunate. However, in defense of Father Martin, you'll notice that he never really quite commits heresy. People call him a heretic priest, and I get it. He's very Jesuitical, but he never quite, even, look what he says. It's important for churches to mark Pride Month. He doesn't even say celebrate here. He says mark Pride Month. What does it mean to mark? I mean, we mark the day that Pearl Harbor was bombed. You know, we mark, we can commemorate things that are bad. So we need to mark it. We need to take note of it. That's true. It's frustrating, but it also reminds me of something that's kind of weird. I used to say this during the Francis pontificate. It's notable that even the most pro-Catholic priests are often, in practical terms, to the right of even conservative non-Catholic denominations. It's weird. And I'm not saying that just even to flack for my beloved Church of Rome, but a lot of the other denominations have gone a little bit squishy on marriage and even on the LGBT issue. Even erstwhile hardline right-wing non-denominational Protestants. Even some of the more upper crust mainline, especially the mainline Protestant churches, which have become quite left-wing. I used to say this under Francis. I said, put aside the immigration issue for a second. Just look at every other issue. People say that Francis is pro-LGBT and pro-left-wing social causes. And I said, Pope Francis, for all of his liberalism, is substantially to the right of most American politicians. Isn't that, it's kind of weird. So anyway, unfortunate with Father James Martin. And after this brief digression, I think we can go back to ignoring what he has to say about stuff. Now, speaking of protections for normal stuff, good news out of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has made it easier to claim reverse discrimination in employment. And this from a case in Ohio. So this is a unanimous Supreme Court decision. Made it easier to bring lawsuits over reverse discrimination. Now, of course, there's no such thing as reverse discrimination. It's just discrimination, and it's just unjust discrimination. Because there's an Ohio woman who claims she did not get a job and then was demoted because she's not a lesbian. Had she been a lesbian, she might have kept her job or been promoted, but instead she didn't get a job and then was demoted. This decision affects lawsuits in 20 states and DC, where until now, the courts had set a higher bar when members of a majority group, so white people or straight people, or maybe even men, which is funny because men are not a majority of the population, but they're somehow viewed as a kind of majority, when they sue for discrimination under civil rights law. And left-wing Justice Ketanji Jackson wrote for the court and said that federal civil rights law makes no distinction between members of majority and minority groups. So that's great. And I know there are going to be some people who are kind of the idealistic types working on their first campaign. Those types, they say, well, we conservatives shouldn't ever use the civil rights law. The civil rights law is a left-wing accretion that undermines the Constitution, and we true small government constitutional conservatives, we would never want to use the abomination of bureaucracy that civil rights law has created. To which I say, good luck. Good luck in the political order, because I think this is the way. And I think Trump understands that, and the MAGA movement understands that very well. We tried for a long time to make the case that lots of the big government programs that have reshaped our political order, that they're unjust and we should minimize their significance if we don't scrap them all together. And we need to just shrink the government back down so it can fit in our pocket. And we need to get back to the old Bill of Rights. But those arguments haven't worked. And we don't live under the constitutional order of 1795 or 1895 or 1995 for that matter. We live under our current constitutional order. And so if you want to pursue justice and if you want to protect groups who are having their legitimate rights violated, you got to play within this constitutional order. And if this constitutional order has largely substituted civil rights law for the Constitution, then we got to make our arguments based on the civil rights law. But we have to win in the real political order. And I don't care if it upsets you because you don't like some legislation that was passed in the 20th century. That's how we live, man. The only way you can govern is in reality. That's how I feel about the big, beautiful bill. You don't like the big, beautiful bill? Propose another kind of bill. Has anyone seriously done that? Well, we just shouldn't spend so much. I agree. I actually am quite concerned about the national debt and have been for 15 years. But what's your solution? We've tried a bunch of solutions. It hasn't worked. So what's your plan? Until you offer me a viable alternative that's going to get 50% plus one of the members of the House across the board and 51 senators, then I really don't want to hear it. Because it's not helpful at all. It doesn't help anybody. This Father's Day, get Dad something he will actually use, a gift membership for DailyWire Plus. Now 40% off with code DAD40. While the culture tries to convince us that masculinity is toxic and fatherhood is outdated, we know better. Dad deserves uncensored ad-free shows, exclusive content, and commentary that won't make him question his sanity. Because frankly, Dad's been right about a lot of things the culture said he was wrong about. Save 40% on DailyWire Plus gift memberships for Father's Day with code DAD40 at dailywire.com/gift. Now, speaking of Trump wins, just one little bit before we get to mailbag here. President Trump is shifting Greenland from European to Northern Command. So, this is another line when people say, we should just be an isolated yeoman republic. And why do we care about anything around the world? Because we have something called European Command. That's why. Because we have something called AFRICOM, okay? Because we're the global empire and we're not a yeoman republic that just sticks to our own borders. So you can either ignore that or cry about that, or you can acknowledge that reality and try to make it work for you. And in this case, President Trump is doing that by shifting Greenland away from European Command, because Greenland is in principle owned by Denmark. But Trump is saying, I'm taking it. You can sell it to me or I'm going to take it, but it's going to be mine. And so he just shifted it in the way that we interact with Greenland from a European Command to Northern Command. I love it. Trump is so serious about Greenland. People all thought he was joking. But we might, this is really the synthesis. You had thesis, which was like Bush era neoconservatism, invade all these countries around the world and install Madisonian democracies. Then you had antithesis, that was Trumpian nationalism. Don't build nations around the world, make our own country great again. And now we have synthesis, which is we're getting those F-35s to fly over Greenland. They're going to greet us as liberators, baby. Free the Eskimos. Build up Madisonian democracies, free them from their Danish overlords, worse than the Taliban, if you ask me. That's where we're at. That's where we're at. So anyway, great news. Much more to get to, but now we got to get to the mailbag, which is sponsored by Pure Talk. Go to puretalk.com/Knowles, Canada be well asked, to support veterans and to switch to America's wireless company. Take it away.
Hey Michael, I recently told a friend of 5 years I had romantic feelings towards her. She is conservative, Christian, wants a family, and is basically my dream wife. She responded that she isn't interested in dating anyone right now, but implied that she might be interested in dating in the future, saying that she simply didn't know. I'm 18, she's 17, neither of us have dated before, and I really trust her to be honest with me. My question is, how long should I wait for her? In the meantime, should I act as if I view her as just a friend, or be a little more affectionate or complimentary? How should I avoid being overbearing while making sure my intentions remain clear and that I understand hers? She's one of a kind, and I really don't want to just pass her by. Thank you for your advice.
Okay, good question. You got your friend zoned. That's what happened. And so you don't know what to do because you want to get out of the friend zone. It might not be that she's just totally brushing you off. In as much as you say she's very Christian, she's never had a boyfriend before, she says maybe she's interested in dating in the future, but just not now. So unlike 99% of the time that a guy hears something like that, she might be telling the truth. It might not just be about you. She might actually just feel like she's too young to date, or maybe that's what's going on. Could be. Could have, a conservative father or something like that. So, okay, it could be that. So what do? Do you ignore her? Or do you act affectionate toward her? I would say neither. You have to act interested in her. But I wouldn't say affectionate. If you were her boyfriend, perhaps then you could be affectionate. But she has said, I don't want you to be my boyfriend. So you shouldn't simp. You shouldn't make yourself into a pathetic kind of person, which would be a risk here. You asked her out. She said no. You got to acknowledge that. You're still interested in her. So you can express interest. Oh, yeah, I think you're beautiful. I'd love to go. Yeah, it'd be great. I'd love to, but you don't want to, so it's okay. I'm not going to make you. This isn't where I'm not a caveman. I'm not going to club you on the head and drag you back to my cave. So, okay, let me know. That's fine. I'm interested. Yeah, I think you're pretty. I think you're great. You got to basically just have a little riz is my, it's my argument. But if you try to be really sweet and affectionate after she's effectively rejected you, that's going to repel her. But you don't need to lie either and say, no, I'm not interested in you at all anymore. I'm interested, but okay, you're not, that's fine. Then you move on. Maybe you start chatting to some other girl and all of a sudden she's going to change your mind. Next one.
Dear Executive Grassy Knowles, I would like to sing you a song. On the shore dimly seen, through the mists of the deep, where the foe's haughty host in dread silence reposes. I would suspect you recognize the tune. It sounds familiar, but all the words, though describing the exact same historical event by the exact same author within the same poem, are completely different. This, as a Protestant, is how I view the Roman Catholic Church. Same author, same book, different song. In his book, long before Luther, Nathan Busenitz, who holds a doctorate in church history, says, "It was the Reformers' commitment to Scripture as the ultimate authority that compelled them to teach the doctrine of sola fide." End quote. It's the Protestants who are singing the traditional songs of Scripture. The Roman Catholics are trying to sing a new verse filled with popes, priesthoods, confessionals, and communion. Thank you for your time. I hope you respond.
Okay, good question. It's kind of funny that you base this invective against the Catholic Church, or this vicarious invective against the Catholic Church, on the phrase sola fide. You say, look, the Protestant reformers, so-called, they understood that Scripture comes first. And so they had the faithful interpretation of Scripture, and that is why they came to the conclusion of sola fide, which means faith alone. This is funny because the phrase faith alone appears in the Bible exactly one time in James 2:24, when he writes, "A person is justified by works and not by faith alone." So that's the only time that phrase appears in the Bible, is there. Now, I don't think we're going to resolve debates over sola fide here. I just use that example as a particular irony that when one says, well, look, I have this great interpretation of Scripture. Scripture comes first. Sometimes people can contradict Scripture. Because sometimes what Protestants will say is, well, no, the phrase also appears in the letter to the Ephesians, faith alone, which is not true. Martin Luther added the word alone to his translation because it didn't back up his theory. So again, there is much more to say on the question of faith and grace and justification, and I'm aware of that. It's a complicated issue. But you can't say, I'm the faithful reader of Scripture. The Catholics don't care about Scripture. I care about Scripture, and then contradict Scripture or change Scripture. Because the question you should ask yourself, not just sola fide, but sola scriptura, Scripture alone. Can people misinterpret Scripture? Yes, certainly you would say. You would say Catholics misinterpret Scripture. Okay, so then how can you say that Scripture comes first? How can you say that Scripture interprets itself if Scripture is apparently misinterpreted by so many people? What you would say is, well, I'm a good interpreter of Scripture. I'm not going to let the Pope interpret Scripture. I'm going to interpret Scripture. I'm going to make myself a Pope, in other words. Okay. Next question.
Hi, Michael. My name is Christina. I appreciate your show. I've learned a lot from you about how my faith informs my politics. As to my question, with the advent of AI, how concerned are you about privacy with our personal devices? I understand that soon we won't be able to purchase mainstream brands without embedded AI that will track and interpret all of our usage. The fear that some have is that it will inevitably lead to a loss of freedom. Thanks so much for your thoughts.
Yeah, I basically react to it by throwing these devices in the river. If I could, you have to be, you can't just be a Luddite, though I'm tempted to be a Luddite, and you can't just divorce yourself from using modern technology. You have to just engage with it in a way that involves some spiritual protection. So you're gonna use an automobile. Russell Kirk referred to the automobile as the mobile Jacobin. Okay, but we all drive cars, and you're gonna live in the modern world. But you have to take a lot of spiritual protections. On the privacy point, in particular, I actually think this can be a good thing. This is a little glass half full thing. You know me, I'm kind of a glass half full kind of guy. I think the loss of privacy can be good in as much as it discourages us from doing bad things. I'll put it this way. I have a modicum of notoriety in public. I go out in public and some people come up and they say hello. And I remember when this happened after I got my show and I did my blank book and everything, I remember it was very jarring because it occurred to me. I said, wow, someone might recognize me at any point, anywhere, and they might watch me, and they might, well, I guess I better be on my best behavior. I can't be rude to people. I can't be that. And that's good, actually. That loss of privacy and anonymity actually impelled me to become more virtuous, at least so that I can get a bad reputation. And I kind of feel the same way on, you need to protect certain aspects of your privacy, your financial information, maybe your political reading and all the rest of it. But the fact that people can get into your devices, kind of puts you on your best behavior, doesn't it? Okay. Today is Fake Headline Friday. We will get to that in the member room segmentum. The rest of the show continues now. You do not want to miss it. Become a member. Use code Knowles, Canada WLAS, at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans.